So my name is Robert Lavertis Bell. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a public school teacher and organizer and currently the co-chair of Louisville DSA, where we work to build a mass movement of by and for working people to defeat capitalism and to bring democratic control to our economy, our workplaces, and society. I'm an eco-socialist, a longtime community activist, a longtime environmentalist, a former youth activist, and hopefully still young at heart. And so I'm really honored to be here with you guys. Thank you very much. And my co-moderator, Shamika Parrish, right? She is having some technical difficulties, so she'll hopefully be back in just a moment. I think we'll give her a minute to get back in here so she can introduce herself. As I said before, I'm a public school teacher, so we're doing a lot of online education over the past year and having these technical difficulties. Zoom problems, Google Meet problems every single day is just par for the course. You guys are all familiar with this though. So yeah, let's actually move ahead instead of sitting here in awkward silence. So let's move to the next portion of the presentation. So quickly, we're gonna go over a few logistical things. We have two technical moderators, that's Scotty and Shamitha. They'll have stars in front of their names. If at any point you have any technical difficulties, you can message them privately for help. Our schedule today is going to include a question period. We'll be facilitating pre-written questions, audience submitted questions from 6:15 to 6:55 about. We invite you to ask questions of your own at any point in time by simply writing those into the chat. Then we're going to move into brief breakouts to hear more from each other and our relationships with the issue of environmental justice and what environmental justice means to one another personally and our diverse communities. Finally, we're going to come back together for some exciting announcements and some ways for you to support this movement going forward. So we ask that you remain muted till the breakouts. Feel free to turn off your camera or turn on your camera, whatever you feel most comfortable doing. To see just the speakers, go to the speaker view, which we find in the right-hand corner of your Zoom window. And still waiting on Shamika to get back in here.
All right, I'm back. I don't know what happened. All right, thank you, Robert. So this part, I'm going to help set the scene. Like Robert talked about, we know that this is more than just a hot topic issue. This is something that impacts all of our lives, whether we recognize it or not. And so let me share that it's clear that the end of the fossil fuel era is accelerating and people are looking for answers. Laid off workers and impacted communities can't keep waiting for help. They need action now. So what changes are needed and how we do it, how can we do it to make sure people aren't left behind? How many folks have heard of the idea of a just transition? If so, react with a confetti reaction found in the bottom right of the Zoom screen. A just transition is a framework meant to address a range of social interventions needed to secure workers' rights and livelihoods as economies are shifting to sustainable production. Primarily combating climate change and protecting biodiversity, a just transition doesn't harm the environment and is good for workers. Additionally, it drives racial justice and social equity. Today, we will be focused less on exact policy and more so on our individual dreams of what a just transition and environmental justice could look like for Kentucky.
All right, now we're going to give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. We're going to start with Bailey. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bailey Ambergy. I am 22 years old. I currently live in Memphis, Tennessee, where I'm a teacher. I teach second grade. I teach English right now, and I also teach science. It's pretty fun. I have been involved in youth organizing in general for the past 3 years, specifically with climate organizing for about 2 years. I did a lot of work with the Sunrise Movement, which is how I know a lot of the folks here. And so it has been a long journey of organizing in different ways in different places, almost getting suspended from school, all kinds of fun stuff, but we made it. I got my degree, got my job, and that's me.
All right, I'm glad to hear your teacher, Bailey. Emma, You're next.
Hi, can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm Emma, she, her pronouns. I live in Frankfort, Kentucky right now. I work at the farmers market in Frankfort doing food access work. And I also do organizing. Can you all hear me still? I do organizing with in the housing justice and police accountability topic in mostly in Lexington. And I am often thinking about how environmental justice needs to include housing justice, or does include housing justice, because you can't, nobody can do anything. I mean, yeah, so you got to have a place to live to be okay, you know. Well, not, that's not true. You got to have, I mean, people need to be housed to be able to, you know, everyone should have a place to live. Thank you.
Yeah, housing is a human right. Thank you so much, Emma. Next we have Pedro.
Hi, you all. Give me a sec. My name is Pedro. I'm 24 years old. I'm based from Louisville. Grew up half my life in Louisville. Grew up the other half Shelby County, on a farm, a tobacco field. So I really got like the tobacco field and then the city lifestyle back and forth. So it was a weird juxtaposition for my life. And I think it really inspired a lot of my activism and really stepping into with the first Sunrise Movement with a lot of great people there who got me into organizing and activism, and then also spread a little bit to my parents who were undocumented individuals. And so immigration activism just was something else that spoke truly to my heart. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be on this panel with such talented individuals.
Yeah, grateful to be independent with you, Pedro. Next is Soliana.
Hello, my name is Soliana. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior at Eastern High School in Louisville, Kentucky. And previously to living in Louisville, I lived in Ethiopia, which kind of also stemmed my desire for environmental activism. I'm a recent graduate of the Earth and Spirit Center Environmental Injustice and Deep Ecologies internship program. And I currently work with other organizations to really hone in on the BIPOC experience when it comes to environment and overall youth and marginalized communities experiences. And I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing a bit about yourselves and your experiences in your work. Thank you for everyone else who is here. Let's get to the conversation.
All right, great timing, you all. So even with technical difficulties, feel free to pop in and out and put questions and ideas in the chat. I'm going to ask the first two questions, and I would like all the panelists to try at least to answer them. And if you don't feel comfortable answering, you can wait for the next questions from Robert. What does intersectional activism encompass, and how do we keep environmental justice intersectional?
To me, I feel like intersectional means that it's not just a very surface layer or targeting one group type of solution. When we're looking for approaches to justice, we're looking at whole pictures of people. We're making sure to put our focus on the most marginalized of groups and people who are most marginalized because of the several intersections that they sit at, making sure to include class, making sure to include race, making sure to include all of these things when we're discussing solutions, because if we don't, we're going to come up with this very surface level approach that's going to help the people who already are kind of already almost there versus the people who are all the way at the back and need the most support.
Yeah, I think I'm going to step into, Bailey hit the nail on the head right there. We have to make sure that intersectional activism encompasses everybody. There's so many different diverse groups of people all throughout Kentucky. And to even say that we need to focus on one thing here in Louisville is ignoring the fact that there is a very different reality in Southern Kentucky that had such great flooding over the last year. All activism, all our efforts, everything that we do should be looking to get everybody together. We want everybody to have equity and equality and to ensure that they have the very basics of life that has been deprived of them for so long. So when we're talking about environmental justice being intersectional, we have to ensure that whatever we're doing at the very front, like Bailey said, is happening at the very back too.
I completely agree. And I feel like for so long, when people think of the environmental movement, they think of the planet. But when you talk about environmental injustice, you really hone in on that people aspect and that community aspect of it all. So I think the second part of your question of how to keep environmental justice intersectional is to allow it in various communities. If we talk about policy, having that as a factor, and when we have our movements, having it in an accessible place for all to join, just little things like that all tie into the intersectional aspect of it all, and recognizing the distinctions from different demographic areas or race relations and so forth.
I would just, yeah, that, I mean, you're hitting it. I would just add that, environmental movement in general should be following the lead of impacted communities. The solution should be coming from the communities that are experiencing the what's happening. And, I think the environmental justice movement also needs to have a really serious consideration of reparations for Black Americans and land back for Indigenous Americans. I think that those are hugely central to having a successful environmental movement.
I really appreciate your answers, and thanks for making sure to keep them intersectional by being intentional, intercultural, and intergenerational. Thank you for those responses. The next question is, since we're talking about our dreams for environmental justice, how do you imagine your dream being fulfilled? We want you to dream big here. What do you imagine a world that is environmentally just to be?
I said in my bio that I wrote that I think a lot of climate justice from a jobs perspective, because of the fact that I'm from Eastern Kentucky, and my papa and my great grandfather were both coal miners, and the job loss. I wrote my thesis on coal miners' job loss and the political implications that it had, especially when it came to the unionizing aspects. And it was just, it's incredible to see the population loss due to the job loss over, like it went from like a population of like 75,000 in Harlan County to about 15,000 now. Like that is a significantly ridiculous level of loss. Because coal was literally the centerpiece, and there are so many communities that look like that across the nation, not just of poor white folks like in Eastern Kentucky, and there are poor Black folks as well out there in Appalachia, but of different communities across the nation where there have been environmental hits, whether it be an oil spill or a job that had a lot to do with energy industry that's been lost in Texas, the power outages. There's so many communities that have been devastated. And my dream would be that there would be no situations like that. There would be no situations where me and my boyfriend a month ago living in Memphis or in February were having to search for water because there was no running water for multiple weeks. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So there would be no situations like that. I wouldn't have to worry every day about, is there even a point in me, imagining my future, trying to think, imagining my kids' future. I look at 7 and 8 year olds every day of my life, imagining their future, not my actual kids, my students, I should say. But you know what I'm saying? It's hard. I dream of a world where I don't have to feel that weight every single day of thinking about climate catastrophe and how it is already impacting people every day, and how it's only going to get astronomically worse in the future if we don't do something.
Yeah, looking at the second part, Bailey, I mean, I don't even need to say anything, Bailey. You're saying everything that's speaking to our hearts right now. But looking at the second part, how do we do this? Just first of all, we got to start talking to people, you all. We really just start to have these conversations. The whole world took a year off because of COVID. We didn't want to do these face-to-face relationships. We were very scared of interacting with people because we had a lot of deep anxiety in our hearts about not wanting to be a catalyst for someone else's loss in their life. But now that people are starting to come around the United States, we have this great privilege, so many people getting vaccinated, especially in Louisville, a home of like healthcare and education. And so many people are getting vaccinated. We have to get on these streets. We have to get back out and talking to people. What is being lost right now? What is being taken advantage? What is being stolen from us right at this opportunity at this moment? So when we talk about these big dreams, we got to start at the simplest thing, and let's go talk to our neighbor right down the road.
I was going to say something really similar. I think it's just the whole interaction part of it and that experience part of it, because everybody has a different experience when it comes to the environment. And if we start uplifting those communities, especially those marginalized and minority communities, we start to hear a lot of things. And when I think of a just kind of movement, I think of nobody shaming someone for where they live or shaming someone for the environmental issues they face, and rather embracing that and incorporating it into the movement and stop victim shaming these people who can't get any other better resources and who are fighting for it. So just hearing just every aspect as well. And it also ties into intersectionality and how we embrace that as a community. I see that as a just movement into pushing forth a better environment.
Thank you, guys. So what comes to your mind when you think about a just transition, or the just transition element to the Green New Deal in Kentucky specifically?
I guess what really, when I first saw this question, the first thing that came to my mind was my parents. They were migrant workers. They came to Shelby County specifically. I remember my dad telling me he moved here in 1987 and saw the very first Mexican restaurant open up in Shelby County 5 or 6 years later. He worked in a pig butchery or something like that. We're like cutting pig, getting it ready for sausage for one of the biggest sausage distributors in America. And then my mom and my stepdad were farmers, and in every single step of the way, it was so easily saw that even my age, where my parents shied me away from financial aspects, they didn't really want me to know everything. I could tell they were being exploited. I could tell they weren't being paid the wages they deserved. I could tell they were putting the most grueling conditions out there because no one ever really cared about them. There's not even just a such thing as workers' rights. There was no such thing as immigrant workers' rights. It was a conversation piece people were having at that point in time. So when we're talking about a just transition element, that's the very first thing that comes to my mind, ensuring that workers get their protection and the rights they need, especially in a state like Kentucky, where agriculture is so integral to so much of our state economy. We have to protect workers' rights at the very base before we even do anything else on this just transition element of a Green New Deal. Because we can't protect them. Who are we really fighting for?
Yeah, I completely agree. And just like the replacement of jobs is so necessary in places where they have been lost. Like there has to be green infrastructure built, and it has to, instead of building it in places where there's already huge hubs of jobs, we have to put it back in the places in the rural areas where they've been lost, because those people did not want to move to a city. They want to live where their families have lived for hundreds of years. They want to go back there. They don't want to move to Lexington. They don't want to move to Louisville. They don't want to move to Nicholasville and work at Toyota. They want to stay in Eastern Kentucky and live with their family members where they have been for years and generations. And it's heartbreaking to see how many people give up a lifestyle that not only have they had their grandparents, they've had farms, they've had land, they've had things there, and that they've had to give up to go and move to places that are unfamiliar to them, that treat them like garbage because they think that they're stupid because of their accent and the job that they come from. And yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, we think, oh, these people would be so anti-green jobs. I think they'd be pro any job that you would be willing to give them.
Well, so what are some misconceptions that people in more urban parts of Kentucky, Louisville, Lexington, et cetera, have about Eastern and the Western parts of Kentucky, or the more rural parts of Kentucky, around support for environmental justice and environmental justice legislation?
I think specifically there's a lot of misconceptions that people will always vote red, and that's not true. In Harlan County alone, all of their local seats are filled by Democrats. Now, whether or not those Democrats are as left-leaning as Democrats in some other places is a different story. However, the fact of the matter is people vote for people who gain their trust. They don't really look at that kind of stuff. The reason that they do it on the local level versus the federal level and the state level, they don't know those people on the state and federal level. They haven't made a personal connection with them, so they're just voting with what they know. But on the local level, you see so much more blue because they know those people. That's their mom's friend. That's their kid's teacher. They know that person. They've made a personal relationship with them, a connection, and now they feel like, oh, I can trust them. I don't care what their affiliation is, or honestly, what I know someone from Eastern Kentucky who's in the state in the state representatives, Angie Hatton, who is blue, and she votes on all of these super liberal bills, blue. And I don't even know if people in Eastern Kentucky know that. They just know that they know Angie Hatton and that they love her. And so they send her back. So, you know what I'm saying? They built a personal relationship with her. She's a lawyer back there, back home in Whitesburg. So people know her personally, and they trust her. So if you gain people's trust, if you build that personal relationship, and a lot of them were leaning towards Charles Booker as well, because he went there. He made personal connections. When you do that, people see you. So I think that people should understand that people won't always vote red. It's not because they're dumb or because they're so set in their ways. It's just they're doing what they've always known. And now if you can break that by making a real relationship, they'll do differently.
I think, yeah, I completely agree. And I also think that whenever you talk about an environmental movement, there's such a set narrative, which shouldn't be there. And typically with urban areas, the stories and the environmental advocacy often gets more picked up than those rural areas. And so when you see this in the media, everybody's going to have this set thing that whatever's happening in Louisville is going to happen in Pike County, when that's not true. So when you talk about just the misconceptions, I think people tend to generalize the issues in certain demographic areas. And I feel like that's so destructive, because that's never gonna lead to actual change for the people who need it and for the areas that truly need it.
I think another misconception is that Black and brown people exist outside of Louisville. I think so often, especially when it comes to environmental justice has been always seen like a white centric. It's been really hard to access it for Black and brown populations. And to really further the movement along, we have to acknowledge and really start having conversations with communities, Black and brown communities that aren't in Louisville, that aren't in Shelby County. There's all kinds of people that needs to be reached out and talked to that haven't been reached out and talked to yet. So we just need to start having these conversations with them.
I appreciate all of your responses, and I think that what you're speaking about is why this movement is one of the most important, because for a lot of people, it starts at home. It starts at what they see and how they see people dealing with health issues. Even from a personal standpoint, having 6 kids and 3 of them born in Louisville, Kentucky, the 3 that were born in Ohio, no issues with birth, no problems. And the 3 that were born in Louisville, because I lived in the West End at the time, have respiratory issues, had seizures, and you see a totally difference in the kids that were born here and there. And that's just me moving here and not even thinking about that. And I'm from 100 miles away. So I think that is what brings me to the next question. A lot of times when we get involved in social justice movements, a lot of times it hits directly home, whether it's a housing issue, whether it's somebody struggling at work. I love that, Bailey, that you talked about how the impact of coal. And when I worked for Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, we saw that declining, but what happens to the communities that are left? And so thank you for lifting that up. We care about Eastern and Western Kentucky. I actually think that environmental justice, all parts of Kentucky, environmental justice is a connecting issue for our state. It's a way to show we're more connected than we realize. So thank you all for sharing. So my next question is, where does your passion for climate justice derive? And why should other young people get involved? Because in the past year, we've seen a lot of issues around environmental justice. So it will be good to share on where your passion comes from and how other young people can get involved or why they should.
If no one minds, I'm gonna go ahead and take the lead on this one. Honestly, climate activism, I'm 24 now. Remember being 15, 9 years ago, and them telling me the world's gonna end in 20 years. The world is not gonna sustain this environmental trajectory that we're on. People don't change their ways. We don't accept more solar energy or wind energy or more alternatives to coal, fuel, and other types of alternative energy. The world's gonna end. And how could you not always hear that drilled in your brain and not want to change or want to do more and want to create some kind of avenue to allow people to progress or get away from these kind of things? So honestly, as much as I hate to say it, the dire state of the world is what drove me to start really getting into activism. I mean, there was no decision at that point.
I guess my experience and where my passion stems from is living in Africa. I used to live in Ethiopia, and it was always seen as top 10 environmentally unjust country. Or it was always in that headline of being so environmentally unstable. And it was, and just seeing the ramifications it had on the community and seeing how just the whole environment could change and shift a community and its people, that really started to, when I came here to Louisville, that really started to affect me. And I really wanted to learn how it was in Louisville and how I could start advocacy and all that work. So when it comes to the youth part of the question, I feel like everybody says youth are the leaders of tomorrow, when that's not true. Youth are the leaders of today. And it's so important that youth start working on this, because there's a passion like no other. When you look at adults, you tend to think that, oh, it's for their job or it's for their occupation, and they need to, do certain things in order to appeal the economic just world we live in. But I feel like youth are so unfiltered in a good way that we do actually bring real issues to light. So I would encourage all youth to, if they have something to say, to step forward and be an activist.
Yeah, to echo that a little bit, when I started, I'm 25, and I guess maybe I started doing environmental stuff maybe 8 years ago, and when I did, I was pretty frustrated because the circles that I was in were very dominated by white, economically privileged older people, and it from like the outside looking in, I was frustrated by the tactics didn't seem to be working that they were using. It was sort of a stagnant situation, and there were a couple of my friends were super confident individuals that they were my age, and sort of entered that space and completely transformed what was happening. They were like 18-year-olds, and just sort of believed in themselves enough to voice what their ideas were. And I mean, it was completely different than what was happening, and it worked. So like we have different ideas, and they're like, and different passion, and different information is important to us, and it can be really important and successful.
Thank you. So I want to make this interactive because I know a lot of times when I'm on panels and I see faces, I don't know what people are thinking. I want to encourage those who are in here in the chat, if you can just put in there what makes you interested in environmental justice. I think it would be helpful for our panelists to know who's in this room with them, because it takes so long to do introduction and so many of you. So if you could just put in the chat why you're passionate about environmental justice. It could be because you live near utility poles, or you woke up and there's dust on your windows every day, or anything. I was baptized in a river. It was a scary river, and I was worried about what was in that river. So like, think about what makes you passionate about environmental justice, or what makes you want to do something about it, and put that in the chat. This is not just for you all, it's for the panelists to see the audience and know who you are. So please feel free to encourage to put something in the chat around that. But my next question is, how has this past year, filled with endless moments of climate catastrophe, violations of human rights, and continued oppression, shaped your identity as a youth advocate? How has this moment radicalized you? How has it brought the issue of climate justice into focus and broadened your perspective? And I feel like some of you have answered this in your answers, but I think it's important because of the recent climate catastrophes that you speak on that. Like, because you already do this work, that's just how I feel with the Justice for Breonna Taylor movement. And I'm driving home and I get the news about Daunte Wright. In the middle of a trial for them killing a Black man, they kill another young man. And that, to me, is hard when you do this work, because you do it so that it doesn't happen again. So I want you to think about it in those terms, that in the midst of all the climate catastrophes we're seeing, the violations of human rights, how has that shaped who you are as a youth advocate? And it could be that your family calls on you. You know, when something happens, I'm the first person they call. I work on voter education. So when they want to vote, they say, hey, Shamika, what should I do? So just think about how this moment has changed you now that there's more attention on climate justice. How have you lifted it up in your work? And then as you see it continuing to happen, how is that shaping the way you look at the work moving forward?
I feel like more than anything, it's just made me realize how much we don't have time to have all these separate things going on anymore. Like, I feel like everybody's all like, oh, I'm very over here and I'm very over there. And it's great to like be with your passions, but we have got to bring these people together. Like, all these movements have got to join together and realize that we are literally all fighting the same thing, which at the end of the day is this system of just extremely violent, racial, patriarchal capitalism that we have got to break ourselves out of. Like, there's no more room for oh, well, we believe in this, but like, we don't believe in like these people's liberation. Like, I don't know, like, I'm just not really feeling that. No, like, we got to be all here, all for everyone, including all people. Definitely making sure, like Emma pointed out earlier, that we're putting marginalized people at the center, excuse me, leading it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess, because at this point, we don't have time to keep making these same mistakes over and over again. We genuinely don't have any time. So we have to start realizing, like the first question said, this fight is intersectional. And the scariest thing would be for all of our movements to realize, oh, it's like that Spider-Man meme. They're like pointing at each other. It's like, this is the same fight. Oh, okay, yes. Like, that's what needs to happen, because it's becoming a mess of like going in circles around each other and hurting each other's work, when really we need to be lifting each other's work up. And just to add real quick, it makes it hard because there are some people who co-op space and gatekeep space, and that makes it hard. But at the end of the day, if we can stay grounded in principles, we can make sure that the right people are at the forefront leading and get things done.
Yeah, I think we're talking about big dreams here. Bailey's already touched on it. Capitalism's got to go, you all. Capitalism is the very base of the world's problems, society's problem, United States problems. Capitalism allows homophobia, sexism, racism, discrimination. Capitalism allows a police state that kills Black and brown bodies like it's nothing. capitalism needs to go, you all. Like I'm talking about, if I was radicalized about anything, it was that capitalism only gives people the space to be able to exploit, and we just got to let it go. Capitalism allowed the people who came into Injustice Square last year and got to make a name and a profit off the death of Breonna Taylor, talking about, oh, we broke the case or whatever. I don't even want to mention the group. We all know what group I'm talking about. But it was capitalism that allowed them to do this. They made their name and nothing got done. They're going to try to take all the credit for everything that's done. Capitalism's got to go, you all. If we're going to talk about radical beliefs right here, it's right there. We got to get rid of it.
Completely agree. And kind of my experience with the events that occurred over the past year was I was seeing, I realized that there's so much that's been happening to BIPOC communities, and that the environment, and that kind of led for me to kind of hone in with my work on their experiences as well, so we can kind of make this one big movement, like Bailey said. So, you see these, atrocities of, Dante Wright and Breonna Taylor and all that stuff. And just to think of, and I thought of ways just to kind of relieve marginalized groups of their struggles, and just basically the whole world is against them, and how can I, with the environment, just kind of help them not feel that way in a sense. And so that's kind of why my work is based on the upliftment of BIPOC communities.
So thank you guys so much. I'm 41 years old. I was raised in an activist family. I've been an activist and organizer since I was a teenager, 14, 15, somewhere around there is what I would say I really started doing my first work. So most of my life. And, much to what Bailey and Pedro was just saying, look, I mean, the best advice I ever received from my elders in the activist community and elder organizers was that, look, it's not enough to be right. We have to actually have a mechanism through which to build power, and we can't gatekeep our way into success, into building power. We can't, we have to meet people where they are, and to really build power through being able to actually bring people along and convince them. And so that was the bit of advice that I think, it sounds simple enough, but it meant a lot to me coming from Ann Braden, who told me that. And so I'm asking you guys, as you guys are now, in your early 20s, I have to say, the transition from being a youth activist to being an elder activist is pretty fast. So I'm going to ask you guys, what sort of advice would you give to your fellow students, young people even younger than you, wondering how to get involved in activism and what they should do, and perhaps what to avoid as they begin and work in this journey?
I think for young people, I think we all get in this trap, especially when we're in that age, about 16 to 18, where everything looks as resume building or college application building. We need to get away from that. Activism, organizing is not something you put on a resume or a college application. It is much deeper than that. It is work that is going to engage and cause communities to thrive, and it shouldn't be just looked at as a stepping stone, kind of. It should be something you should be really trying to give your whole heart to. On that note, though, there's going to be disappointment. There's going to be defeats. There's going to be moments where things look bleak and no one wants to talk to you, and you just get every door slammed in your face, and it's heartbreaking, honestly, to want to be like, I want to create change, but I just don't feel like I can have the ability to keep going, keep fighting, keep making strides. You're going to get to where you need to be eventually. And it's only going to happen because of great people like you who keep getting up every single day and deciding that I'm going to keep this fight up.
Yeah, I would say on the note of not letting things get to you, I think that, especially after the year I've had, I've realized that a lot of times when you're trying to help people see something, it can really come back on you in a way that is like, it's hard to handle. It's hard to deal with. Whenever you're trying to fight for the right thing, there will be people literally coming after you. Like, I'm not going to lie. You have to be ready for that kind of stuff. There will be people coming for your neck, people who you thought were in the same fight as you. And you're like, wait, was that at me? So it's just very like hard to deal with that kind of stuff. There's heartbreaking moments. You gain people, you lose people. It's a wave of stuff that will happen. Organizing is a lifelong thing. And so there's going to be times where you're stepping back, where you're stepping forward, where people are all over you, like attacking you. You got to just like take a moment, or moments where you're the limelight star, you're the bearer of truth, everyone loves you. Like, it goes back and forth. Like, sometimes you're the loved one, sometimes nobody can stand you, but you just have to stand in your truth and just be like, you know what? I don't care if these people love me or hate me. I'm gonna let these people talk. At the end of the day, I know that this is what I stand in. These are my principles. I'm gonna stick to them. Like, here, a revolving door, exactly. It's like a revolving door, Shamika. Like, they come and they go, but you gotta stay still, gotta stay grounded, because if you start switching up, people won't trust you anymore. You won't be able to mobilize folks anymore, because people can see through that fakeness. And eventually the truth will come to light, and people will be done with you if you start getting involved in that fake stuff that I was talking about earlier, where people try to co-opt, people try to gatekeep. If you let yourself get caught up with that, people will find out. So you got to make sure that you stay true to you. And even if it's the hard thing to do, you got to do it. But yeah, when things get hard, you can always feel free, like especially BIPOC femmes, trans folks, take a step back for a second, realize that this fight is even harder for us, and then come back when you know that you are ready to go.
I completely agree. Yeah. And I'm still 16. I'm not in that elder realm. So please tell me if I'm illiterate here. But just for people emerging into this activism, I would encourage, just start within your own community and learn through there, whether it's starting a club or leading a protest or whatever it is. I'd say don't dive in right too quick on state level or national level work, but kind of work your way up and kind of learn through that whole process, because it's an amazing journey. And don't hold back from that journey, and just allow yourself to learn that way. And that's where the true I feel I'm experiencing the true environmental knowledge and everything else is happening. So yeah.
The only thing I would add is that you all are so cool. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm like up here with all y'all. Okay. Is that sometimes it takes time to, like, with the most successful anything I've ever been of was we spent a lot of time together. We had deep relationships, So, it's not just going to happen if you when you really connect with the people that you're working with is when it's best. So, it's hard for me to do, like, talk to people, but that has, that's really when I felt like everything was the best, was when we were all talking and meeting new people.
Also, if you can speak a couple languages, I know it's intimidating to talk to people about this in a language you're not, like, I speak Spanish. It's going to be hard to have these conversations with people in my family who speak Spanish. But we need to have these conversations as much as we're having them in English. You all, if you can speak another language, you can access communities that haven't had people to talk to them, especially in Kentucky, where it's been very English-centric, white-centric focused for the last 50, 60 years of organizing. You can speak to people who haven't been spoken to before. Step up. We need you more than ever.
Yeah, and real quick, I'll also say, don't ever feel like you're too young to do something. Like, in the civil rights movement, there were literal children getting fire hosed all the time. There's no too young. And you may feel like, oh, I don't have enough knowledge, or I don't have enough wisdom, or, oh, I see all these people on Instagram and they all seem like they have PhDs. It's really not like that. I promise. Like, people learned because they took time, and you can do the same thing. Sorry, my computer acted weird. And you can do the same thing. And don't ever feel like I'm not knowledgeable enough, or I don't know enough, or I'm not old enough, or I'm not smart enough. Like, there's no that. There genuinely isn't, because it's going to take every single person's strength to get to where we need to go. So know that whoever you are, whatever you have going on, you still have something to offer.
Thanks so much, everyone. So I think we're a little ahead of schedule, but I think perhaps it's time to move into our breakouts. I should get some clarification from our hosts, but yeah, I think we're going to be moved to our brief breakouts where we get to learn a little bit more about each other and what you've thought about the conversation so far. We hope to make these breakouts as comfortable as possible, so feel free to have your cameras on or off, speak either out loud or in the chat. When we get back together in about 10 minutes, Kentucky Youth Climate Strike will be announcing the Earth Day plans, how to get involved. We got some announcements from Shamika. So don't just head out. We're gonna drop the questions in the chat. So feel free to show up in these breakouts, however feels best to you, and have fun.
I had asked something in chat to the host. There's a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if we wanted to answer those before we moved into breakout rooms. Just wanted to echo that, what I had typed in chat. But if the host wants us to move into breakout rooms, I'm cool with everything.
Yeah, I was just, I saw the questions in the chat and wasn't sure how to get to them. So yeah, so actually we could take a minute to answer some of those questions. So do you see a question in the chat that you found particularly interesting, Pedro?
Yeah, I think there's two on our script that got added by one of our great hosts or tech people. When we think of how we begin a just transition in Kentucky, but also in the US as a whole, what would you consider the starting point? Maybe not just education, but really, where do we begin this just transition? What would we tackle first? That's a big question. I think when we talk about what we can do on a state level, when we come to just Kentuckians, I think that's just any beginning point when we start at state level is going to be a good beginning point, whether it's the coal issues in the Appalachian region, whether it's migrant workers here throughout the rural fields in Kentucky, whether it's the heat island of Louisville, and how do we best address that and combat that with the West End factories that are polluting and killing families. Honestly, I think it's very much a beginning point of just start organizing, start being in a community, and start getting these issues raised on a national level, which seems so daunting to so many people, but it's just really beginning and engaging and starting to organize and be part of your community in any way you can. That's a starting point. You want a starting point? There it is.
Yeah, I think first a lot of people need to understand the severeness, because I think that a lot of times we talk about climate and climate catastrophe, and a lot of people just kind of see things happening and don't connect it to that, because they're not 100% aware of what's going on, or like they know that like global warming is a thing, but they don't really know exactly what that looks like or what that like materializes as. And now they're starting to, because people are finally starting to, before, media would never be like, yeah, this is because of climate change, but now more people are starting to admit, yeah, we got a little bit less time than we think. And people are starting to, so a lot of people need to be told, like educated on the scope of the issue, how it affects people daily, because most of the time people don't care if they think it's something far off, and a lot of people still think this is far off. So they're like, whatever, but it's like, no, this is happening day to day, and here's how it's happening to you, and here's how it's happening to people you love in this state that they live in, and all these kinds of things. And then they'll be like, more inclined to get involved. So education, and definitely, like Pedro was saying, organizing as well.
I would say, I guess you can't hear me, sorry. I would say I'm really interested in community controlled affordable housing, because it not only makes people be able to have sort of a more stable existence, but also is a really wonderful way of bringing people together. So not only it builds community while also making sure people are safe and comfortable.
Yeah, I think just that sorry. Yeah. I think that just community building aspect and just empathizing with other communities so that when we do, emerge into these, movements, that we do have that foundation of acceptance. But yeah, that's kind of my thing.
If you're a young person wanting to combat climate change, wanting to work on policy, or maybe you're creative and want to contribute art or writing or anything else, we want you to join KYCS. We want you to ask yourself, what do you want to give? Because that is where your actions will be the most impactful and passionate. We're putting our membership onboarding form in the chat right now, and we invite you to fill out the form. You'll be added to our Slack, and then you'll be informed of future actions and ways to plug in. If you wish to donate and support us financially, our Venmo is KY-strikes. Especially as summer inches closer, we're committed to advocating for and electing leaders who will put forward a real plan to tackle climate change or make space for new leaders who will. We need to build a movement that's ready to relentlessly fight for what we need, not just what pundits say is politically possible. We have not begun our endorsements for the upcoming election cycle, but since one of our moderators, Ms. Shamika Parrish-Wright, is a candidate in the Louisville mayoral race, we wanted to give her a minute to plug her campaign if you're interested in learning more about her run.
So when I say yes, it was just yes because I saw environmental justice and the young people wanted me. I had no idea that I would be speaking about the campaign, but it's definitely important for me to have the youth voice. I listen. I want to show you I listen. I want you a part of our decision making. So I've talked to my team who was like, you got to say something about this. And we want a youth advisory council. Now be mindful that I consider all youth really up to 30. I've changed it officially just because my oldest is 28. But also just realizing that the world that I came out to in 15 and 16 is different, and that it takes it's taken a lot for people to find their way and what they want to do in their activism and social justice. So we have a website. It's just my name, shamikaparrishwright.com. But I also have an email. It's just hello@shamikaparrishwright.com. And I would love for you all that are interested to sign up to join the campaign efforts to make sure that I have your issues included in the platform and to make sure that I have your voices in this campaign. I started early. I was the first to announce for many reasons. It's going to be the hardest race for me because I'm convincing people that not just rich white men have the answers, that we are the ones that we've been waiting for, and that we all have to reimagine what our leadership looks like, what we need, and people that are going to bring the people's agenda. All of my work has been tied to ending poverty, to attacking racism on every level. And I personally, and with my family and friends and loved ones, have always dealt with some form of environmental justice. From my brother having lead poisoning very young, to my children having breathing problems now, to me, I'm on my third pacemaker, all brought on by the environment that we live in, all triggered by the air that we breathe. So I've knocked on the doors with REACT, and I see Ebony Neal Cochran here. I've been out there because I believe in sustainable redevelopment. I believe in we have the answers that we need. We're just not listening to the right people. You are the right people. So I hope that you would be encouraged to know that I want your voice as a part of this campaign. And I believe the way that we connect our urban and rural communities is by using issues like environmental justice to bring us forward. You can learn more about me at shamikaparrishwright.com. I tell my story. I tell why I'm doing what I'm doing. Also, I want you to share your story, not just there, but we have set up as a part of Injustice Square. As you all know, I'm one of the lead and core organizers for what we did in that space and in the Justice for Breonna Taylor movement. We set up a site called WeGetThereTogether.com, and this was for us to tell the stories. In many movements, there's always been unsung heroes and sheroes and they and non-gender conforming people who have showed up to do the work that they are called to do. And you see the big faces out there. You see the Martin Luther Kings, you see the Malcolm X's, the Angela Davis, but there's always been people on the ground pushing these issues. I'm using WeGetThereTogether.com to tell the story of the unsung people, the people who dropped off ICE and Injustice Square, the people like you who continue to fight for environmental justice, but also see where it intersects with justice for Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, and too many more. So with the WeGetThereTogether.com, you can share your story on how you got connected to the movement. It's going to be a multimedia project that's going to turn into a book. It's going to benefit the Kentucky Injustice Freedom Fund, where we can continue to work of supporting the protesters, the other work, any projects or campaigns you all have. Anybody that contributed and anybody that's been a part of the movement can draw funds from that to work on your projects. I plan on donating to your work. I'm going to do that anyway, because that's what I do. But I also want you all to share who you are, share your story, tell the story, because I want someone to pick that book up and to find themselves in the stories of you, the stories of the people you're connected to. So that's my plug. Join my Youth Advisory Council if you want to. We have a long time, but it's not, I feel like every day is a day I need to be working harder. So that is, you can go to hello@shamikaparishwright.com and just say you want to be a part of it. And then even if you don't want to do that, please visit WeGetThereTogether.com and leave your story on how you got involved and why you do the work that you do today. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So now for our exciting Earth Day plans. On April 22nd, we're planning on holding art built and chalk outs through our local chapters. This art will be used in coordinated actions the day of. If you're interested in participating, make sure to fill out our onboarding form. We will also be holding a virtual component so that the event's as accessible as possible. Be on the lookout for details coming soon on our Instagram @ClimateStrikeKY. Once again, we want to give thanks to our moderators and panelists and to everyone who joined this town hall for taking the time out of your day to listen and participate. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.